Moving on, we're talking about financial toxicity, when love gets expensive and money turns into a form of control. Vita, have you ever been in a financially toxic relationship?
I haven't, just because before my husband, I dated losers. So I don't know how they could have controlled me with their money because they didn't have any. Not that you're a loser if you don't have money.
Vita didn't date anybody that had money. And I also haven't been in a financially toxic relationship, but I know plenty of women who have. And they get themselves in these relationships where they stop working, they get married, they stop working, and now they're completely financially dependent on their husband, and he starts controlling. He's a narcissist. He starts controlling them with the money, and they don't really know what to do because a lot of these women have signed prenups, and prenups are not in their favor, and they're afraid to leave. They're afraid to what the other side looks like. They're afraid that they haven't worked in 10 or 15 or 20 years.
You know, I think that this happens a lot, and I think another form of a toxic financial relationship is that I see a lot is a parent-child relationship, where I think that there's a lot of parents that are controlling their adult children with purse strings. Mm-hmm. And I think that's toxic too.
So it's like wearing golden handcuffs, basically.
Yes, so whether you're in a marriage where you're wearing those golden handcuffs, or you're in a relationship with a family member, whether, you know, it's a rich aunt or uncle or a grandparent or a parent that's basically controlling you with their money. And like, what do you do, right? I mean, I feel like you're kind of stuck.
Yes and no, because I feel like a lot of people, and I know people that have been in these situations where they have massive trust funds and some of them made their own money over time, and
where there's stipulations is what I'm getting at. So I think that there's definitely people where the parent will not like a spouse, right? Or somebody they're dating, and they'll be like, you're cut off if you keep dating them. I mean, I'm gonna admit something. My husband and I didn't like somebody one of the kids was dating, and we were like, should we cut him off? Like, because I mean, you're just so desperate, right? And so it's easy to get in those situations, right? Like, are we gonna pay for them to like do something that we don't agree with?
That's a little different.
It's a tough call.
But that's also different because when you're supporting your son, and they're dating somebody that you don't like, ultimately you're paying for them as well, because he's paying
for the person.
He's paying for her flights, he's paying for her trips, he's paying for their dates,
dinners, like all the things.
So I feel like that's like a little different,
we do have
because cutting off, you would just be like, look, I'll pay for you, but I'm not paying for them. So I don't know if that's really
so we weren't
the same.
Toxic.
It could be more like, oh, if you marry this person and you have a trust fund, you are going to get
and
caught.
that happens all the time.
All the time.
I mean, I feel like that's a very, very common thing. Like, if you marry this person, you were done with this family, financially and otherwise.
So I think the moral to the story is to never be financially dependent on anyone, whether it's your family, whether it's a spouse, anybody. Just try to figure out a way in this world to make it on your own, because whenever you become financially dependent on somebody else, you lose complete control of your life.
I agree with that. And I think it's really hard sometimes to maintain your financial independence as a woman, because you're being drawn in so many different directions, and it's really easy to not want to deal with the money stuff. I mean, I'm guilty of it. You know, sometimes you're just like, I don't have the energy to go out and do this when somebody's willing to hand it to me. But I do think that it's okay to be financially dependent on your spouse if you have an agreement and you're not in a toxic relationship. Like, you can be financially dependent on somebody and not be in a toxic financial relationship, because all women or men that are dependent on their spouse financially aren't being controlled. Like, you can need the money your spouse earns without them having you in these golden handcuffs. You know, you can still have that sort of agreement within your family. So I think it's almost more not worrying about being financially dependent on somebody for your everyday existence, but having that agreement that they can't control you with their money.
But so many people are in these relationships where it is toxic, and the husband's
Yes.
telling them, oh, well, you can't have money to do this, you can't have money to do that, but if you're good and you do this for me, then I'll reward you.
And that's not okay. I mean,
Well, I know people in
yeah.
those situations where I will reward you. Okay, I'll buy you this bracelet. I'll buy you a car if you do this. I know somebody right now who's trying to get divorced, and she's broke, and she signed a prenup. The prenup is horrendous. She had a bad attorney, so now she has to get a new attorney, and he's hiding his money. So now she hired an attorney without a forensic accountant. He's hiding money. She's stuck.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
I
toxic
think-
financial relationship.
And this goes back to, for those of you out there who haven't been married yet, pick your spouse wisely. It's okay.
You can.
But I mean,
But if they don't see the red flags right
you
away,
might not see you're blinded
that's
by
the
love.
problem. Because sometimes
Yeah.
they don't show their true colors until after you're married. And a lot of women look at the situation like, oh, but I'll sign the prenup because I love him, and I'm not in this because for financial gain. I'm just love him and I want to marry him, which is really a bad idea.
Yeah, and I think this goes beyond finances almost. Like any sort of relationship where your spouse is controlling you. I mean, that's not okay. You're a grown adult. You should be controlling your own actions. Like you shouldn't be asking your spouse permission to do things. I mean, obviously you want to consult your spouse because you're in a relationship and not do things that upset them, if you can. But your husband shouldn't be calling the shots in your everyday life.
Or controlling your basic needs.
No, not at all.
I feel like there are a lot of different scenarios that we could talk about. Maybe it starts off where the wife gets annoyed because the husband's paying for the neighbors and buying dinner for all of his friends, or paying for trips or tables at a club or whatever it is. And that maybe in the future could escalate into something, possibly more serious.
I agree. I think that a lot of micro financial decisions can then be where independently they're not that big of a deal, but they can turn into this macro issue in a marriage where it becomes an issue of, are we aligned financially?
Yes.
And I think that finances can take a relationship that otherwise wouldn't have any toxicity and make it toxic.
And also, we can talk about like the love bombing aspect of this, where somebody's holding the money, they're dangling the carrot,
which
basically,
is so
which
bad.
happens all the time with controlling somebody through money.
Yeah, and I think, when I think it really happens a lot is in these instances with like the young girls and the old men.
Yes.
Because like these girls,
they're controlling the narrative.
They're literally controlling all of it. And I think the young girls are coming in and they're desperate for like a Chanel bag or a Birkin or something, right? And they get themselves into this situation, and fast forward 10 years and their entire existence is being controlled by this old man's money, which is really sad.
Well, it happens a lot where they're not even married. Like the older person is controlling the younger person. Oh, I'll pay for your apartment and I'll pay for your shopping. But eventually you're going to age and you're going to get older, and then they're going to replace you for somebody younger.
Or they're stuck because they can't afford to do anything.
And if they haven't saved their money, or if
Which
they
they
haven't
likely
invested,
haven't.
then what happens?
They
age out, and then
there's a new set of girls that are getting
girls.
trapped in the same financial mess as the
that's
last.
financial toxic abuse as well.
I completely agree. I mean, it's a serious issue, and I think that, like you said, it's important to be independent. I personally think it's okay not to work and not to be earning your own money. I really do feel strongly about that. I think it is okay to just want to stay home with your kids. That being said, you need to make sure you're doing that with someone that's not controlling you. And think really long and hard before you give up your career.
Yes.
So that's the thing. Like, I think it's very much okay to give up your career, and I would never judge anybody for doing that, but think before you do it.
As long as you're in a good financial spot with your significant other, where you haven't signed this crazy prenup, which a lot of women do, you've given up your career, but everything is split down the middle. So whatever you come into the marriage with should be yours, whatever he has should be his, and whatever you accumulate together as a married couple, I feel like should be split down the middle, and that's not always the case.
No, it's not always the case, and it's not fair. And that's why you have to think about it before you stop working. Like, say you're married and you're done working. You just don't want to work anymore, right? Go back and think, did I sign a prenup? And you know what? If you signed that ironclad prenup, then you know what? You might have to keep working. You might. And that's the reality. And that's, the result of a choice you made early on. And it's not fair, but you're going to be better off if you keep working.
I honestly don't know one married woman who has signed a prenup who has gotten divorced and they weren't completely screwed over. I don't know one. I don't know one that has signed a good prenup. So that's a whole other show, but I feel like there are so many red flags though in the beginning that most of the time you'll see.
So think long and hard before you give up your financial independence, because you don't want to end up in one of these situations.
I couldn't agree more.